Preston Bill Charles III. Thank you, Preston. Good evening, everybody. I'm Dave.
And I'm Marcellus.
And this is True Theater. We started True Theater back in 2010 with the sole mission to build community through the sharing of true personal stories. And if you're here tonight, you're part of that community. Welcome. We are so excited to have you here. Thank you, thank you. Let's have a, sure. Welcome. Yeah! We're so glad to have you here for the final show of our 14th season. It's crazy.
And later tonight, we're going to share some details about the 15th season. Now, meanwhile, are there any first-timers in the audience tonight? Stand up.
You don't have to stand up. Where'd you get that?
I'm kidding. But you are, it was wonderful to see you, and you're in for quite a treat. So
yeah,
welcome.
We've got all sorts of things going on tonight. Of course, we've got some t-shirts for sale you might have seen. We've got a special public service announcement recorded by a local TV celeb just for you. We've got, we're going to be announcing the new season, as he mentioned, and subscriptions are going to go on sale tonight for you only, and you watching at home, for a ridiculous price. We'll talk more about that later. And of course, we've got several great stories.
And for those of you watching from home, we're coming to you from downtown Cincinnati, Ohio, in the beautiful and historic Memorial Hall. And we also want to give a big thank you to everyone here for always making us feel welcome and helping our shows run smoothly.
A big thank you, too, to NorseMedia, NKU's student-run organization, who are making the live streaming of this show affordable by sponsoring the rental cost of all the equipment used to create the live stream tonight. Thank you. And of course, yes. Now, you'll notice I said affordable, but not free. For that, those of you watching from home for free may be interested in making a little donation. No pressure. We'd rather you watch than feel pressured to pay. But if you are interested, there is a way to do that. I think it's about to pop up here on the screen. There's a QR code you could scan. There's a number you could text, and you get a link back. You can go to our website. There's all sorts of ways. And those of you in the audience are also welcome to follow any of these paths. We are a nonprofit organization. This venue costs a lot of money. The live stream costs more than just the rental equipment. There's all sorts of reasons why your money goes to a great use to help us fulfill our mission as a nonprofit, as I said. So those of you who are present who like a more visceral experience, our board member Ramona will be walking around at intermission with a dip jar, which when you sort of just dip your credit card into it, you just make a quick $10 donation. It makes a real satisfying ka-ching sound, and you can have your choice between one of these beautiful silicone bracelets that we are both sporting, saying "Building Community, One Story at a Time," and "I support True Theater" on the other side, and or if you like, one of these beautifully branded pens that I write with all the time. Yeah.
But can people get both?
Can people get both? That's a great question, Marcellus. Well, you could try smiling at Ramona. Maybe that will work. But if you're one of those people whose, your friends accuse you of double dipping all the time, you could turn your weakness into a strength tonight, and there'll be no question that you deserve both of these luxury items by dipping your card twice. So have fun with that. I trust you will.
And as a reminder, no donation is too big or too small.
Yes.
One more time, not too big. But let's clarify that. What is too big?
Too big. If you were to give us $50,000, I think that sort of like makes our taxes really complicated. So
for clarity, keep the donation slightly under 50, $49,999.99. We'll take it.
Yes. Or maybe even just a little bit lower than that, because tonight's performance is sponsored in part by our friends at Mest Comics once again. Mest has been returning time and time again, sponsoring a lot of these evenings. The MSD in MEST stands for Metropolitan Sewer District, and the comic is about a girl named Lilliput and her wet, wonderful, and wild adventures that take place beneath our feet. I have both of their first two, what do they call them, seasons, runs of the comic, and they're beautifully drawn, their stories are great, and a lot of the action is slimy. So go check them out at mestcomics.com.
Slimy.
Slimy.
And finally,
I thought that would be a selling point.
before we get started, we also wanted to acknowledge the generosity of Cincinnati State, who are providing tonight's ASL interpreters. So tonight we have Dawn Caudill interpreting. And this is something we want to continue to do for each show going forward. So thank you, Dawn, and thank you to Cincinnati State.
Yes, yes. Okay. And now what you all have come here before. You know, we always say at True Theater that everybody has a story to tell, and the only difference between strangers and friends is the sharing of that story. And tonight you're going to make several new friends. Your first new friend tonight has been teaching art at Oak Hills High School for nearly 3 decades. Oh, you know him already. His happy family consists of his wonderful wife, their 2 adult sons, and a ridiculous dog named Gordon. He is also the president of the Cincinnati Viking Club. I'll bet most of you did not know Cincinnati had a Viking Club, but it is a century-old establishment that evolved from a German rowing club into a vibrant social club on the Ohio River. And when he's not busy with all of that, he's likely working on his ambitious goal to hike in various areas around Cincinnati 500 times with individuals for an hour each, and recording those walks on his Instagram account at StevieG513. So tune into those for sure. Give it up now for Stevie G himself, Steve Groh.
How's everybody doing? Have you ever gotten an email from a Nigerian prince needing help getting his fortunes out of the country? I'm friends with that guy. Well, not that guy specifically, one of those guys. There's more than one of them. I just mean I'm friends with a Nigerian scammer. In fact, I met him when he was trying to scam me. I know what you're thinking. This is the part where everybody turns to their spouse. Oh, honey, this poor deluded man thinks he made a friend. I get it, I would be thinking the same thing, but I want to let you know, I don't think I'm an easy mark. I'm actually quite skeptical by nature, probably even more skeptical than the average person. In fact, when someone says to me, look at yonder hill where those sheep are that have recently been sheared, my go-to response is, on this side. All right. That's a dumb joke. I'm just trying to make the point that I'm skeptical by nature. I get Skeptic magazine. I like reading about scams, the psychology behind them. The idea of deception is involved in them all, and we all find that intriguing. I mean, that's why you guys are here tonight, right? To find out how some of us got suckered or almost suckered. Well, I have a good one to tell you, because this is what happened was it's easy to get tricked. I'm not saying that it isn't easy to get tricked. It is. In fact, it almost happened to me. In April of last year, around April 15th, I got a little bing from my phone, and it was a message from my friend Amanda. It was from her Instagram account, her business account, and she was reaching out to me for some sort of help. I can't remember exactly what she was saying to me, but I do remember that what she was saying seemed very plausible, so I was interacting. And then a couple moments later, she asked me maybe for some personal information or wanted me to click on a link, and I remember thinking, uh-oh. And I texted back, wait, how do I know this is Amanda? And they texted back, oh, it's Amanda. Yeah, it's definitely not Amanda. It's not even the response of a particularly gifted scammer. So I immediately called my friend Amanda and let her know that her account had been compromised, and she felt, she was obviously distraught because this was her business account, and I was upset, she was upset. You want to do something, I wanted to do something to help her out, but what can you do? You're not supposed to interact with these scammers. You're not supposed to engage with them. But I sometimes do engage with them. In the past, this has usually involved me just sometimes correctly guessing that they might be a Nigerian scammer, and because there's a lot of them, and I will use a translating app to respond to them in Nigerian. How's the weather? How's the Nigerian president doing? And occasionally, there will be a little bit of a response back, but usually that doesn't go on for very long. Pretty quickly, they get spooked and they stop texting. Even the scammers don't want to get scammed. But I knew I had this line of communication. I knew I had this line through the DM. So I slid in there and I said, hey, give my friend their account back. That, of course, didn't go well at all. But then I said, I'm trying to think, what can I offer? What can I do to get this account back for my friend? And I said, listen, you're obviously good at hacking. You can probably scam a bunch of different people. If you give my friend their account back, I'll give you something that none of your other friends has. An American friend. Now, okay, that's ridiculous. It was met with laughing face emojis and pay up, but we did keep texting. And so the texting is still going on, and at some point I said to him, would I be correct in assuming that your life has been unfair? Because if it has, and I assume it has, I would think that would make it a lot easier to be unfair to others. And as cheesy as that might sound, I really think the tenor of the conversation changed at that point. I know out there you're probably still thinking, he's still a nut, and this is a crazy story. But I think at this point it might be helpful if I gave you a little context of where I was mentally during this exchange. Just 8 months prior, I'd been out fishing with my boys, having a great time, and I went home that evening, went to bed, woke up at midnight, and the entire world was spinning. I had to crawl down the stairs. The slightest movement, I thought I was going to hurl. I wanted to go to the emergency room, but I thought, I cannot even get off this couch. A series of doctor's visits later and shots into my inner ear would reveal that I had something called sudden sensorial hearing loss. I'd gone completely deaf overnight in my left ear, except instead of the sweet sound of silence, I have the eternal shriek of tinnitus in my head. I wasn't doing well. I'm a teacher, and I started missing a lot of school. I was only sleeping 2 hours a night. It was getting pretty dark. In fact, I was getting to the point where I felt like I'm either going to jump off a bridge or I need to get my head right. And so I read a book on cognitive behavioral therapy and started listening to podcasts on stoicism and reading up about meditation and mindfulness. So at the time that I'm responding to Emmy, and that's the name of the scammer I would eventually learn, I probably thought that I was the guru from the Headspace app. Is this really what you want to be doing with your life, Emmy? So I am still trying to think, how can I get the account back? What can I do? And I come up with an idea, and I say, hey, I know it's money on your mind, right? You got your mind on your money and your money on your mind. I get it. I'm a teacher. I teach photography. You obviously have a cell phone. How about this? I'll teach you to take pictures. You take some cool pictures in Nigeria, send them to me. I'll print them out, mount them on a board, put them up at the local coffee shop. We'll sell them for 20 bucks a pop. I'll send you all the proceeds minus my costs. We're in business together. There were no laughing face emojis to that one. I could tell he was thinking about it. So I immediately called my friend Amanda back, and I said, call off the troops, because I knew that some of her friends were responding to him in the same way that I was and threatening him and saying things to him like you might. And I told her, tell him to stop. I actually think I might be able to get this account back for you. And I am absolutely sure that her and her husband thought I was completely out of my gourd. And maybe I was a little bit out of my gourd. But 20 minutes later, I got a phone call from her husband. What did you do? He gave the account back. He gave the account back. Yeah. I was as shocked as you were, to be honest. I did not know that he was going to do it. I thought maybe he would. So I go back to Emmy and say, holy smokes, you gave the account back. He's like, yeah, you told me to. And I said, okay, we're in business. Now, I will say, I tried to follow through with this photography thing, but Emmy is wasn't particularly the greatest photo pupil. He struggled a little bit. He actually did get a few great shots, but we ended up kind of struggling with it, and it kind of fell onto the wayside, and we just ended up talking. Me telling him about Cincinnati, him telling me about Nigeria. I learned that in 8th grade, he dropped out of school with his brother to sell weed and drugs and fence items so that he could make enough money to get his mom and family out of this horrible apartment that they lived in the city and out to the outskirts of Benin, where he lives. And a lot of other interesting things about his life and what he's been through. And as it got to May, I already knew from all of our interactions that he had a May birthday and I had a May birthday. And I thought, you know what, Emmy, I've got an idea. All this time I've been resisting giving you money, but I have an idea. I'm going to do something I've never done before. I'm going to do a Facebook fundraiser, one of those birthday fundraisers. And I'm going to see if I can get us a little money for some paint. One of the things that we talked about was maybe him starting a sign business. We were trying to look for some ways to raise his station in life and get him away from the criminal activity. And it's very difficult there to even come up with something, and sign painting seemed like a possible idea. So he was excited about it. I'd already told our friends a little bit about this relationship, so they weren't completely being, hit for the first time. When I put the birthday fundraiser out there and I said, look, I cannot vouch for the fact of whether or not Emmy is going to use this money as we're hoping. I can only tell you that I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do, which is I'm going to buy, if we can make $100, I'm going to buy a $100 Apple card, and I'll photograph it and I'll send it to him. He then sells that card and he gets a pretty great exchange rate that way. I realize that sounds pretty scammy too, but we talked about this quite a bit. And he's only 22 years old. He's very, very poor. He doesn't have a bank account. Even getting to the bank is an extreme hardship for him. So this seemed like the best way to do it. And thankfully, people did donate. And so I sent Emmy a photo of a $100 Apple card, and he was thrilled. He was blown away. He couldn't believe that it had worked. But what he didn't know was that was just my contribution. I wanted to be part of that, of course. And so a few minutes later, I sent him a photo of another $100 card, followed by another, for a total of $400. And he was speechless. Now, he could have just taken that money and run away. That could be the end of my story, right? And that is how I got scammed. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. But that's not what happened. A few weeks later, he sent me a photo of himself in front of all of these containers of paint, 5-gallon big containers of paint that he had bought. And I was thrilled. And a little bit after that, a couple weeks after that, I said, hey, Emmy, have we gotten a customer yet? Because I was wondering, have we kind of, managed to put our criminal lifestyle behind you? And he said, yes, I did. And I said, that's great. Tell me about it. And he said, I painted a license plate. And I said, great, you touched up a rusty license plate? And he said, no. A friend lost their license plate and I painted them a new one. I was like, okay, I'm not sure that's legal, but, don't hate the player, hate the game. All of this is just to say, I think I have a genuine relationship with this young man in Nigeria. I care about him, but I've never forgotten how we met. I'm not an idiot. As soon as we made friends, I changed all my passwords and set up two-factor identification. I care about him, but I don't really fully trust him. And I think he knows that, and I think he understands the reasons for that. When I got him the cards for the paint, I didn't know that he was going to get the paint. I hoped that he would, but I was fully aware that he might not. I'm really glad that he did, though. We all just want to be happy, and I hope he's happy. The person who said money doesn't buy happiness has never tried giving some of it away. When I was dealing with this ear problem and the struggles of this tinnitus, I read a lot of inspirational quotes, and one of them was by the humanist writer Robert Ingersoll, and it goes like this: "Happiness is the only good. The time to be happy is now. The place to be happy is here. And the way to be happy is to make others so." I like thinking that maybe I brought a little bit of happiness into the life of someone who's had it way harder than me, someone who lives thousands of miles away, someone I may never meet face to face, someone who can give nothing to me. Well, aside from a little more happiness.
All right, everyone. One more time for Steve, huh? Now remember, his Instagram account is @StevieG513, and if you want to go on one of his 500 one-on-one hikes, you can reach him there, or just tune in and enjoy the adventure vicariously. He needs hikers. Now, I do have a PSA to share, and I know this is not the PSA you're waiting for, but if you were at our last show of True Hand and you left some rings behind to the, eternal void that is Memorial Hall, I would like to let you know that I still have them. They are still on my finger, and it is turning purple, so please find me to claim them either at intermission or after the show. Our second storyteller tonight is a professional storyteller, writer, director, and producer, and currently teaches screenwriting at Cincinnati State College as an adjunct professor. He has worked for years as a writer in many senses of the word, has optioned 4 screenplays to Hollywood producers, and earned shelves of awards for his work in cinema, TV, and theater. His 2019 play, Who is Amos Otis, was voted favorite local theater production in Movers and Makers magazine and was considered for a Pulitzer Prize in drama in 2020. You can find the film adaptation of it on many streaming services. But how exactly did his incredible journey as a writer begin? Bet you didn't see this coming, but funny enough, there's a story there. Please welcome Greg Newberry.
Oh, hello. I bet you think that I'm here to tell you about being a victim of some, Nigerian prince or some scam artist or some troller out there, but that's not the case. Scamming runs in my family. And so I'm here tonight to tell you about a scam that I perpetrated as a young man, a scam that changed my life, and a scam that could possibly change yours. Because I'm going to introduce you to a low-cost, easy-to-access scammers tool that you too can use to go out there and perpetrate your very own scams. So my scamming experience goes back to high school, and I was planning on being a doctor. So I was taking all of these math courses and science courses, trigonometry, advanced algebra, advanced chemistry, and things that I really didn't like, but I had to struggle with. So I'm taking these courses, and I was also playing basketball. And so I was what you would call a jock back in those days. I was actually as far away from the arts as one could possibly be, except for one thing. I was always kind of having ideas. I was writing down stories. I was writing poems, and I was putting these on pieces of paper and shoving them in a drawer, not thinking anything about it. I thought everybody did that stuff. You know, I was a closet writer. Didn't think much about it. And I was very fortunate in that, excuse me one second. I was very fortunate in that in my senior year, I managed to get a basketball scholarship to go play basketball at a college in Athens, Greece, as a freshman. And so this was a big deal. So I went to Greece, and we were going to play against the Greek pro teams, and it was a really, really cool thing. And a couple of things happened to me over in Greece that changed my life. The first one was there was a military takeover of the government. There was a coup, there was martial law installed, and we went from being these very revered American basketball players to not being able to get a cab, like overnight. So I didn't really feel the love, I didn't feel welcomed. And then the second thing that happened was a friend of mine was a journalism major, and one day I was telling him about my closet writing experience, and he looks at me and goes, you know what, you need to read this book. And I go, what book's that? He goes, it's a book by an author named Jack Kerouac, and it's called On the Road. Is anybody familiar with Jack Kerouac at all out there? Yes. So On the Road is written in a stream of consciousness style, and I'd never read anything like it. I'd never seen anything like it, and it blew me away. I was shell-shocked. I was like, this is unbelievable what this guy's doing here. And I was so blown away that I devoured every Jack Kerouac book there was. And I got inspired, and between what was going on politically as a foreigner in this country and being exposed to this literature and this madman writer, I felt like I had some things to say. And I felt like I had some insights into the human condition that I wanted to share. And I realized that, you know, this doctor thing probably wasn't a good idea, but this closet writing thing, you know, maybe that was. And so I decided I'm going to be a writer. And I also realized while I'm in Athens, Greece, that, you know, becoming an English major in Greece with a bunch of Greek students probably wasn't the most challenging thing I could do. So I decided to come back to the States. And I came home and I had that awkward, tragic kitchen table discussion with my parents and said, you know what? I'm not going to take advantage of this basketball scholarship anymore. And also, you know what? I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a writer. And I could see my dad's face go pale, and I could feel his heart palpitations across the table, and I could see him conjuring in his brain, you know, oh my God, my son, all of my hopes and ambitions for this kid are out the window. He's going to be one of those starving artists, and his life is ruined at the ripe old age of 19. Well, I was really fortunate, and I have great parents. And they eventually came around to saying, you know, let's give this kid a shot. I don't know what's going on here, but we'll see what he can do. And I realize now what I was practicing then is kind of something I'm wired with. Is like when I decide to do something, I'm all in. And so I decided Miami University had one of the best creative writing programs in the country at the time. And I thought, I'm going to go to Miami University, and I'm going to they had, you know, playwriting and poetry and fiction writing, nonfiction writing. They had a graduate level short story course. They even had a writer's workshop in the summer. And I'm like, I'm going to be all in. I'm going to Miami. I'm going to take all this stuff. So I pack my bags. I go to Miami. And my best friend at the time, BJ, was also a student at Miami. And BJ was in pre-med, and we decided we're going to go register together. So we go to this building where they were having the registrations. We walk into this place, and it's like hundreds and hundreds, it's just giant hall, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students. They're batshit crazy, they're going out of their minds, they're anxious, they're all freaked out because this line just wraps around and around and around and around and around forever, and they're all afraid they're not going to get the classes that they want to get by the time they get up there. You know, their classes are going to be filled up and they're going to be out of luck. And I'm looking at this, and I came from this really kind of privileged small school thing, and I'm walking in this big giant hall with these crazy students, and I'm insulted, and I'm thinking, hey, we're the customers, we're the customers, and they're treating us like cattle. This isn't right. And I looked at my best friend, and I said, you know what? Let's clipboard scam this thing. And he knew exactly what I was talking about because he was my best friend and I always shared stories. And the clipboard scam had been handed down to me by my older brother, who had developed it when he was in the Navy. And he was on a ship in the Navy back in the Vietnam War days, and he realized that when he had a clipboard, people looked at him like he was an authority, like he was important, like he was on official business. And so my friend's like, yeah, right, let's do it. So we go back to my friend's dorm, and we pick up a couple of clipboards. And since he was in pre-med, he had a couple of lab coats hanging in his closet. Cool. So we each put on a lab coat. We got our registrations. And I figured, it's like, all in, right? So I figured, hell with it. I'm going to sign up for every writing class this university offers. I'm going to sign up for the entire year, forget the semester thing, forget prerequisites, forget electives. I'm all in with this thing. So we fill out our registration forms. We walk back to the giant building, back to the giant hall. The kids are still bouncing off the walls, going crazy, and we stroll right through everybody, right to the front, up to the counter, where these students were being besieged by these crazy kids. And we set our clipboards on the counter, and I look over at the kid, and oh, by the way, they had just started using computers, and I said, we need to do a computer check on these registrations. And the kid said, sure, okay, fine. So he takes our registrations, we walk to the end of the counter, and we're hanging out down at the counter, and like 10 or 15 minutes go by, and they bring us our completed registrations, computer approved. And BJ and I, we look at it and we start cracking up because we had gotten every class that we had signed up for, including the graduate level short story class that I was supposed to go to college for 3 more years and get a degree before I even qualified to take it. So I was all in. And that year at Miami, I just immersed myself in writing, and I had a blast. And at the end of the year, I remember I went home, and I'm in my parents' living room. My mom walks in with the mail, and there's an envelope from Miami University, and she hands me this envelope, and I open it up. And I realized in that moment that my clipboard scam had given me everything that I needed from Miami University. And I started to tear up. My mom looks at me and goes, what's wrong? Did you flunk out or something? What's going on? And I said, no, Mom, it's like the opposite. I'm done. She goes, what do you mean you're done? I said, I'm done. You don't need it. I'm going to be a writer. You don't need a degree to be a writer. I don't plan on teaching English, I'm going to be a writer. And I knew that I had to get out of Dodge. I knew I had to get out and go out in the world and start my life. I knew I had to drive cabs. I needed to hitchhike across the country. I knew that I needed to work on a ranch. I knew I needed to get out there and expose myself to the characters and the experiences that I would be able to use to write about and tell those stories. Well, my parents were really supportive, but they're not nuts. And so they weren't going to subsidize my hitchhiking adventures across the country, and I needed to get some stake together. I needed to get some money together before I could take off on my writing adventure. So that summer, I got a job at a concession stand in Burnett Woods. Everybody familiar with Burnett Woods? All right. So it's a big park over by University of Cincinnati, and at that time, it had a giant pond there, and at that time they had a concession stand there. And so my job was going to be running the concession stand. And my first week working there, at this pond, there were these boats, these little paddle boats. They don't have them there anymore, but they had them there then. These little paddle boats, and they were moored to a little dock. And my first week, I realized that the paddle boat people who were responsible for renting out the boats never showed up. Whoever had that contract had just forgotten about it, or wasn't paying attention to it, didn't care about it, whatever. So I'm working this concession stand, and people would come down to the park, and they'd come up to me, and they'd say, hey, can we rent out a paddle boat? And I go, well, I can't, it's not my thing. I don't know who those people are. I'm sorry, have a snow cone. And they would be disappointed, and they would leave the park, and that was kind of how it went. Except, at the same time, there were 4 or 5 of these inner city kids who were hanging out in the park all the time. And part of their entertainment was they would go over, because they're kids, they would unchain the paddle boats from the dock, they would jump into paddle boats, and they would go paddling around the pond and just having a good old time in the summer. Except for when there was, back then they had park police, and there was a Burnett Woods park cop. And he would come over the hill, and he would look down, and he would see these kids paddling around in the pond, go running down to the pond, screaming and yelling at him, and they would paddle the boats to the other side of the pond, ditch them, jump out, run through the woods, and disappear, leaving this cop the responsibility of rounding up these boats. So he would take them one by one and drag them back to the dock and chain them back up again in the hot sun. So he wasn't a happy camper. Well, one day I'm sitting there and I was talking to the ringleader of these kids, and I just happened to tell him, you know what, we were saying, like, what was I going to do when I grew up, that kind of a conversation. I said, in the course of this conversation, I said, I'm going to be a writer, and I mentioned using the clipboard scam at Miami University to get all the classes that I wanted to get, not thinking anything about it. And the very next day I look up and I see this kid. I'll never forget it. This kid's walking into the park, and he's wearing a pith helmet, the kinds like the mail carriers wear. You wear on a safari someplace. He's got this pith helmet on. He has around his neck, he's got a stopwatch. He's got a whistle. Under one arm is a lawn chair, and under the other arm, he's got a clipboard. And he goes walking by me like, hey. And I'm not sure what the hell's going on, but he goes down to the edge of the pond, he sets his little lawn chair up, and he walks over and he unhooks all the boats. And he sits back down in his chair, and he proceeds to rent the boats out for the rest of the afternoon. People would come in, he would get their name, write it down, figure out what time it was. I don't know what he was charging them, what time it was, however long they were allowed to be out on the pond paddling around. And they would get out there and they're paddling around, and he'd blow his whistle and wave him in. This guy had taken the clipboard scam to an entirely new level that I could never have imagined. It was a thing of beauty. And I'm watching this kid do this thing, and it's just cracking me up. And then I look up, and I see the park cop coming over the hill. And he looks down, he sees these people paddling around in the pond. And he looks at me, he makes a beeline for the concession stand. He's heading towards me, and he's sweating, he's huffing and puffing. He gets up the concession stand, puts his elbows on the stand, and looks at me and goes, man, I'm glad they found somebody to rent out those fucking boats. It was a win-win-win-win for everybody. The kid made money, the cop was happy, the people got to ride the boats, I had entertainment, it was cool. Now I think of that kid, often, because I know the clipboard scam changed his life. He's either in prison, or he's a CEO of a Fortune 100 company somewhere, because he was brilliant. I think it's the latter. I think he's running some company somewhere. And I don't know how much money he made renting out the boats, but I'm sure it was more than I was making selling snow cones. Because that day he walked into the park and he took a cab home. So the clipboard scam's been pretty good to me my whole life, and I'm here to kind of share with you and give something back. You see, I did wind up hitchhiking across country, and I worked on a ranch, and I drove cabs, and I became a writer. So the clipboard scam, it changed my life. It changed the life of that kid in the park that day. And for the low, low price of $4.29, you too can go to Staples and pick up a clipboard and see if it'll change your life too. Thank you.
One more time for Greg. That's awesome. Hey, before we bring out our third storyteller tonight, I want to tell you about next season, season 15. I can't believe it's already here. We're really excited about the lineup that we have for you tonight. These themes have been popping around in our minds for a while, and they're already on the screen. Okay, so what you need to know is, starting on Thursday, October 10th, we're coming back with season 15 with True Roommates. We've all probably had one, and we probably have some stories about them, and we want to hear them, share them out here in October. So start thinking about those. January 23rd in 2025. Holy cow. True Comic. What's a comic? Well, a comic is a person, a comic is a thing, there's lots of things that you could work into that theme. True Comic is coming to us in January. And in April, True Magic. A lot of you know that we've voted on themes by audience participation in the past, and True Magic has been on the list and is always like second place, like 3 times it's happened to us. Well, we finally decided to just give it its own spot and see how well it does. True Magic is coming at you on April 24th, and Marcellus will tell you in just a minute about the last show of the season, which you're going to have an opportunity to weigh in on. But first, you should know that that QR code that you're seeing right now will also be visible during intermission, so don't worry. We'll get you to the page where you can get your subscription tonight. So good news and bad news. Bad news is next season, we're raising our individual ticket prices back to pre-COVID prices to $25 a piece. So our subscriptions have traditionally been buy 3 tickets, get 1 free. So that would be $75, right? Well, no. Because you're here tonight, we're going to sell you next year's subscriptions at this year's subscription price for $60. You can get next year's subscription. You can go down to the, yes, thank you very much. I mean, that's a big deal. I mean, we really just want you to come back. So that's why we're doing this for you. You're here now. We want you to keep coming back. $60. You can go down to the box office at intermission, see Jared. You can go to this. If you do go to this QR code, you need to enter the code TrueDeal15. I think it's on the screen. It'll be on the screen at intermission too, to get that ridiculously low price. So like if you were thinking of buying 1 anyway, maybe now you're thinking about buying 2. I don't know. But anyway, so that's the deal for next year. So we're thrilled to announce our season 15. Start thinking about your stories and get those subscriptions. All right. Yeah. That's not worth that. Don't.
It's too late, man. Revel in it.
All right. Thank you.
So you may have heard this before, but the stakes have never been higher. You have the power to choose one of our themes for one of our shows, and that kind of power should be intoxicating and borderline corruptive. As Dave mentioned, there's the QR code up there. You don't need to pull out your phones now unless you would like to pull out your phone and text TRUE14 to 44321. Remember, we're trying to get to that $49,999.99. I'll wait. Any takers? No? Okay. This will be back up there for later, and you can actually vote up to 3 times for any of the topics that you see currently displayed: True Milestone, True Skin, True Fitness, True Sign, or True Celebrity. I see some phones out, yeah.
And we'll announce after intermission what the results are, and that'll be our 4th show of next season. But you're going to have to get your subscription without knowing what that show is. So, thank you. We're ready to move on. Okay. Clearly that was the least entertaining portion of the evening, so we needed to tell you about it before we introduce our 3rd storyteller tonight. All right. She is a born and bred Cincinnatian, an award-winning lawyer who has spent her whole career fighting for you in the pursuit of making sure the government is not scammed out of the tax dollars that you pay every year. She adores her family and all of her nieces and nephews and stepson and her dog Rosie that she wishes she could have accompanied her tonight. She's also wildly head over heels in love with her husband, who she says, I can't remember what life was like without him. He's totally great, and he can have any of my leftovers I leave in the fridge without asking me. I just want him to be happy. That is so sweet. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my wife, Jennifer Verkamp.
I did not authorize that introduction. Now I can't even remember my story. I have an admission. I have a little bit of a split personality, let's say. By day, I'm an extroverted trial lawyer. I run a busy law firm. I represent whistleblowers and prosecute fraud on behalf of the United States. Thank you. It's a weird little niche. We prosecute under a statute that was signed into law by Abraham Lincoln. And it authorizes private citizens to come forward, report fraud, and then bring lawsuits on behalf of the United States to recover defrauded funds from the Treasury on behalf of the taxpayers, each of you. It's a real honor to do it, but it's very intense, it's very high stakes, and it's a very outward energy kind of job. My days are filled with constant meetings and calls, talking to teammates, making decisions, doing deep evaluations, deposing witnesses, making court arguments, all those things of litigation. Those are my days. But by night, I'm a true introvert. Like, my happy space is I'm totally alone, I'm in stretchy pants, nobody knows where I am. I like to do things like read and walk and yoga and swim. If you see me out somewhere and I'm not acting gregarious like a trial lawyer, it's not because I don't love you, but because I am a true introvert. And it's not even just that I like the introspection, but that I really need that time to balance this other side of my personality so my brain doesn't like explode. So this dichotomy in my personality was really challenged last year when we had a 2-month fraud trial in Minnesota. Now, trials are their own animal, and maybe a little different than you've seen on TV or on court TV. They are like Olympics for lawyers. It's like everything you do every day sped up to supersonic speed. And in cases like these where there are fraud trials, they're not just complicated, but they have probably taken years and years to get there. Like this one took 10 years to get there. And instead of a trial that's days or weeks, it's months. And the damages are in the tens of millions or hundreds of millions. So it's very high pressure. And for this trial, we were basically bringing an entire team, my law partners, attorneys, paralegals at my law firm from Cincinnati and elsewhere, and we were moving to Minnesota for a couple months. And the government also had a team that was litigating with us. And during that time, we were going to be working 24/7. So trial, you might see what a trial day looks like in front of a jury, where you see lawyers at the table and you're examining witnesses and you're objecting and you might be going up to sidebar and talking to the judge, and you're doing that for 8 hours, 9 to 5. But what you don't see is what happens behind the scenes, because when you get out at 5, you're not done. There's a whole cadence in the evening where you're doing something basically every hour. Like maybe a half hour later, you're identifying your witnesses for the next day to the court on the other side, and then you're identifying the evidence you're going to use the next day. The defendants are rebutting that with the evidence they're going to use, and then each of you are exchanging what objections you're going to have to each thing, and then you have to have your briefing on the objections you have on all that evidence on the judge's desk by first thing in the morning, and then you have to argue those legal issues before the jury even comes in the room, and then wash, rinse, and repeat day by day by day by day for a long time. And so knowing that all of us were going to need some balance, we got a suite of rooms, and one of the rooms had, you know, like one of those suites, it's like a kitchenette where there's like a really large room and then like a bedroom off to the side. And I did what I could to make this war room like everyone's living room. So in addition to having what you'd expect, like printers and computer monitors and all that kind of stuff, I also had like every Costco snack you could think of, like the enormous Costco bottles of tequila, comfy blankets strewn all around that I bought off Amazon. I brought like pictures of David and Rosie and encouraged everyone else to do it. I had aromatherapy sitting around. I had a, like this little screaming goat that people could press when they really got overwhelmed. And people were really enjoying that. And my bedroom, as an introvert, was right off of this group room. So I had to do an extra lot for myself to make sure that I stayed balanced. I practiced what my dad calls clear the mechanism, which is like your brain's a tool, so you have to clear it to stay, you know, focused on your singular task. So before long, I was in the chute, which is, I think it's a Midwestern expression of like when you're at the point of no return, you don't have any choice anyway, you're just doing it. Kind of like when I walked out here, I'm just telling the story, I'm in the chute. And we were in weeks and weeks of this, and we got finally to a holiday weekend, and a lot of people had gone home. But I had stayed there because I was like the first exam on the next business day, and I think it was like a 2-day exam, so I had a lot of work to do, and I couldn't go home. So I was there, and my introvert side inside of me was like screaming like, I am going to shut you down if you don't do something about this. And so I decided, you know, I'm going to take the morning and I'm going to go get a massage. I'm going to go somewhere where no one knows where I am. And I found a place, and I, you know, Ubered there. I'd never been there. And then you get into the like the sights and smells when you go to a spa. You know, it smells wonderful, and you know, all the relaxing art. And they gave me a cup of tea, and I put on slippers, and I snuggled up outside of the room, and I was like really proud of myself for making this cocoon for myself. And the phone rings, I see it's my dad. And I have that like choice in that moment, should I answer it? I'm like right about to go in the massage room. And something you should know, I am from Cincinnati. I grew up on the west side of Cincinnati, and I have one of those like big German West Side families that were really close. The type of family that, you know, if you were to come upon their get-together, they would all be like out shouting each other to tell a story. I have 3 sisters, and between them, they have 8 kids. And I'm really very close to all of them, and I'm also the oldest, so the concept of screening, my parents call, is not really a thing. Any oldest children out there? So I answer it. I immediately hear that this isn't an average call. I could tell my dad was really upset, and he tells me that one of the grandkids, Mark, also my nephew, had been in an accident. And as soon as he starts telling me the story, I'm like getting up, you know, and going to the desk like something's going on. And he tells me that Mark had been, who was in college at Xavier, had been in an accident in the early morning hours, and this is like first thing Saturday morning that we're talking, and that he was in the hospital, and it was very serious, and that he had hit a woman who was pregnant, and she was in critical condition. He had broken his nose, but it was his fault, and he was arrested. And they were going to take him to jail right after the hospital, and they had appointed him a lawyer, and he had the name of a lawyer and a case number, and could I intervene? Could I get involved? Could I call this lawyer? Of course, you know. And I had gone outside of the spa, and I was like crouched in the hallway and like digging, you know, pen and paper and writing all this down. And the other thing he said was, he was good, Jen, he was crying. And he said, please don't tell his mother. Like, he just couldn't bear it. He was humiliated. And I said, we're gonna have to tell my sister. And, but let me make some calls. So I immediately, dialed a lawyer, and his name was Josh. It was a 513 number. It was not a lawyer's name I'd recognized. And he gave me the rundown, very similar to what my dad said. But he also said that because it's a holiday weekend, he could make bail today, or he could wait in jail and be arraigned on Tuesday. And I had heard stories that this was a possibility, so I was concerned. And he said we needed a post bail of $25,000. And I said to him, you know, do you work with a bail bondsman? I would have to understand a lot more details about that. And he said, you know, I'll have someone call you. And I said, well, let me check out a few things, let me get back to you. And I immediately started my emergency phone tree. So what I know, I know enough to know that I don't know enough about criminal law. I'm a civil lawyer. I'm a litigator, but I'm a civil lawyer. And I also know how long things take. In an emergency, a litigator is kind of who you want because we know how to like put a lot of things in action at one time. So I basically pulled in every favor for every friend I have. And as I'm going into the spa and saying, I'm sorry, I have an emergency, I have to go, and they're like, what the heck? And I'm calling an Uber and getting into the Uber. I'm like texting friends. I have a friend who has a friend in the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office to say, can you dial that friend and see if they can find my nephew Mark? I have a public defender friend, and I'm like, can you call me? I need some help figuring this out. I called my husband David and said, pulled him out of the gym and said, how quick can we get $25,000? And he's like, what the fuck? You know, so I called my financial planner, and so I was like putting all this in motion. Meanwhile, I do get a call from a bail bondsman from a 513 number, and he explains to me the process, and he explains to me that he would show up near Hamilton County Courthouse with a sheriff to receive the bail and kind of like walk that process. And I still was like, you know, I need to know more about that. You know, I'll call you back. So then I call my public defender friend who said that she had been playing phone tag with Mark's lawyer. So by that time, I was almost back, you know, like getting back to the hotel and could get on my computer and start doing more research. And we decided that we would call the lawyer together. But first, I had to call my sister. I told my dad, we really have to call Angie, that's his mother. And she was at brunch with her in-laws, and I start the conversation with, Ange, everything is okay, don't worry. I just have to tell you about something. I started the story. She had the exact same reaction with me, which is she just stepped up from brunch and walked off and got into her car. She was actually very upset. And she said, has anyone called Mark? And I was like, I don't think he would have his phone on him. And then I was like, no one has called Mark. And she's like, I'm going to do that. And she was also driving to Xavier. Meanwhile, I go back on the phone with my public defender friend, and we talk to this lawyer together. And this time, he's in a crowded place, and he said he was having problems talking because he was actually at the jail and had other clients that he was working with, and he didn't have a lot of time. And my public defender friend is fierce as fuck. And she was just on that. I mean, she was like firing questions at him. What are the charges? Why don't I see him on the jail registry? You know, asking him all these questions. And he kept being like, not quite like, you know, I can't hear you, but like kept stepping away and stepping back. And finally she was just yelling at him, what office are you with? What office are you with? You know, because she is a local, you know, defender. And he wouldn't answer, and then he hung up. And then she's like, Jennifer, he's a scam. And I'm like, oh, just as my brain is reeling, my sister texts me in all caps, Mark's at home. Mark's at home. He was in his college house. And I was like, what the fuck? You know, and I just like, just kind of like fell on the floor of my hotel room, was just like laying on my back, like processing this. And the next call was my nephew Mark, who I was relieved to hear from because I just spent a bunch of time thinking that he was really injured and in a lot of trouble. And I answer the phone, and he goes, Aunt Jen, I have 3 things to tell you. And he's like, number 1, I would not call Grandpa, I would call you, you're the lawyer in the family. And I'm like, good thinking. He said, number 2, I would never say, don't tell my mom. And I was like, good boy. And he said, and number 3, I would never get in this kind of trouble. I'm like, well. And And I just reminded him that he is so loved that Grandpa and I would throw ourselves in front of a train with $25,000 to save him. And so I was just like kind of laying on the floor processing that I had been scammed and also organizing the sting operation when I remembered I was in the middle of a fucking fraud trial. So I got myself up, got back in my chair, got back in the chute, and weeks later we won that fraud trial with a successful jury verdict. But it was way longer than that before I got a massage. Thank you.
Let's give it up one more time for Jen. I tell you, there are a lot of perks that come with being married to such a beautiful and smart and funny woman as Jen, not the least of which is she brought home the screaming goat. So we get to play with that. Folks, we're going to take a 15 to 20-minute intermission. You can get your T-shirts, have fun with the dip jar, get those subscriptions, and vote, vote, vote for our 4th show of season 15. Preston Bell Charles III.
By the way, you really need to do yourself a favor and be sure to follow Preston on Facebook so you're alerted when he turns on Facebook Live, when he's playing out somewhere or participating in one of the many open mics that he participates in or even orchestrates. It's so uplifting to listen to his music in the middle of the day or even randomly in the evening. And if you are thinking of checking out the Cincinnati Music Festival this weekend, know that Preston used to busk outside of the festival, but this year, he's actually part of a quartet inside the festival. So, definitely be sure to go check it out. Very cool, Preston, because you are the man, so.
Great. Yeah. And folks, hey, the results are in from your voting for the 4th theme of season 15. And I'm here to tell you that True Fitness received the fewest amount of votes. But True Celebrity almost took it. The winner of the contest is True Signs. Yay! True Signs will be our 4th show of season 15. Thank you all for participating. And thank you all, too, for participating with the dip jar at intermission. Ramona said she couldn't keep up with all of you. You all are great. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That really goes a long way to help keep the stories coming.
Yeah. And if you think that you have a story that might fit for one of our 4th themes for next season, again, roommate, comic, magic, or sign, let us hear from you. There are many ways to reach out to us, but the best is by going to our website at truetheater.org and filling out the form on our Submit a Story page.
And to keep abreast of when we start actively putting these shows together so that you can be sure not to miss the opportunity to submit a story or just know when we're doing it so that you can show up, be sure to follow us at True Theater on most of the biggest social media sites or get on our mailing list, also at truetheater.org. Just remember, we spell theater the fancy way, ending in R-E. That's truetheater.org.
And now, for that special public service announcement we've been talking about. We reached out to ask Channel 9's John Matarese, who you may know as the guy who first coined the phrase 9 on your side, and who alerts us all to all the scams and gotchas out there that we should be keeping a careful eye out for. We asked if he might have a story to share for this particular show. Unfortunately, he is busy tonight, but he seemed so sincerely interested in True Theater and appreciative of what we do that we went out on a limb and asked him if he'd like to record a special PSA for us to play here tonight for you. And to our delight, he said yes. So here's a special announcement just for you from John Matarese.
Thanks so much for the invitation to speak to True Theater. I sincerely wish I could be there tonight. So many other commitments, so many news stories. It has been a week between the Delta problems at the airport, the Microsoft meltdowns. Now we're doing reports on school shopping. I'm so sorry, but I still wanted to join you because it's such a great program that you have. I wanted to give you a quick warning about some of the scams that we keep hearing about at WCPO Channel 9, and most of them involve your devices, your laptop, phone, and iPad, because that's where people are being targeted. I don't know if you've seen the latest one. It concerns an unpaid toll and says you owe money for a highway toll, and if you don't pay it immediately, you're going to get hit with a $100 fine. I'm hearing from lots of people who have gotten this message on their phone or gotten an email. It'll either come from the state of Ohio, the Ohio Turnpike, or the Sun Pass in Florida. If you've been to Florida, you think you owe money on a toll. Well, don't respond, because that's what these scams all come down to. They hit you at an inopportune time. You think you need to respond immediately, and you do. And people are giving their credit card number to these fake toll collection notices. Don't do that. Be skeptical. So many of the scams that I hear about at WCPO concern messages like that. You've probably seen these too. The delivery notices saying that there's a problem delivering your package. They really pop up after Amazon Prime Day and after Black Friday in November, saying there's a late delivery, they can't find your address. They're looking for personal information. They're looking for a credit card. The texts are not going to come from the Postal Service. They're not going to send you a text to your phone, just like with the highway tolls. So be so skeptical of those. Another one we're seeing now with that CrowdStrike Microsoft outage last week, people are getting alerts, pop-ups on their laptops saying, warning, your computer is infected with a virus. You have a virus that's going to lock up your PC. You need to call this number immediately. They'll claim to be with Windows. They'll claim to be with Apple tech support. They give you a phone number to call. You'll call. You'll get somebody who says they want to help you. They're going to clean up that virus in your computer. Next thing you know, you're giving them a credit card. You're giving them $100 to clean up a virus when there wasn't a virus. And worse, they may be putting malware into your computer and getting personal information. If you see a thread here, it's that people are getting these unexpected messages and texts all the time. You're busy, you're doing other things, you're cooking dinner, and what you do is you respond. And I'll tell you the worst one. The worst one says it's from your bank. Your account has been locked for fraud. Have you seen that one? It'll say it's coming from PNC, US Bank, or the #1 bank in Cincinnati, the most accounts, Fifth Third. If you're a Fifth Third customer and you got a text on your phone saying your account is locked due to suspected fraud, you're going to drop everything. You're going to say, oh my goodness, there's a problem with my bank account. That's where they get you to call or log in or text someone, and they get your bank account information. And it's not really your bank. So what should you do? You need to be skeptical of any type of alert about a problem, a toll you owe, something wrong with your computer, God forbid your bank account. You need to be skeptical. Don't trust those messages anymore. I get them. I almost fell for the toll one myself. So you've got to be skeptical. If they say there's a problem with your bank account, call the bank. Call Fifth Third, US Bank, PNC, whoever, Huntington. Call the bank. See if there's a problem with your account. Oh, but don't call the number that came in that text alert, because that number will take you right to a scammer. So I want you to all be careful so that you don't have to contact me saying you just got ripped off for $500 or $1,000. Be smart when it comes to your devices and all these messages. As I always say, don't waste your money.
Thanks so much to John and Channel 9 for putting that together. To be forewarned is to be forearmed, and we hope you all leave here a little bit wiser tonight.
And now, our last storyteller of the night has always had several careers going at once. That means he is impressively multi-talented, or it means he just can't hold a job. His steadiest gig right now is as a regular columnist at Cincinnati Magazine, but he also holds the record for being an on-air personality at WEBN Radio longer than anyone else, from 1974 to 2012. He has also worked at other radio stations, and at the same time, he's been creating commercials, jingles, song parodies, and produced comedy material heard all over the country. His story tonight is not about a scam he was victimized by, but a scam in which he victimized the entire city of Cincinnati for an entire month. If you lived here long enough, you may remember this. You may have even heard him tell a story about it, but you haven't heard it quite like this. Please give it up for J. Gilbert.
This is the General Electric Model 62 table clock radio. I think my parents bought it before I was born. I don't remember a day of my childhood without this being in the house. It became my radio pretty early, about 7 years old. Went into my bedroom, and I started and ended every day of my childhood listening to this. At first it was, Perry Como, Frank Sinatra, Dinah Shore. One day, something called rock and roll came out of this thing. And it thrilled me. It hypnotized me. I loved that music. And I loved the DJs playing that music. Like they were partying, they were having a good time. I wanted to be there, I wanted to be that guy. And I got to be that guy. I had spent most of my life on the radio in a bunch of different ways. I got to be the DJ playing the songs. At one point, I got to be a person who made the commercials that went on between the songs. Not just the commercials, but I have a bit of a musical background, and I got into the jingle business. If you were in Cincinnati as far back as the 1980s, you can blame me for the bicycle for me. Is that Montgomery Cyclery? Sorry. Tim Timberman. Sorry. So I was doing a lot of that, and the reason I'm telling you this is because I was born to do the story I'm about to tell you. I grew up with the radio, living the radio, knowing the radio, understanding it, and wanting to promote it. So when I got a job at WEBN, I was on the air, but at the same time, I was doing commercials, and they were very well received by a lot of different clients, and a lot of the clients started contacting me directly to do commercials for them, not just to run on WEBN, but on stations all over town. And I kind of got into that business. One day, a client called and said, "By the way, do you also do jingles?" And I lied and said, "Yes, I do." And I totally faked my way through that, and I've been doing jingles ever since. So one day I got a call from an ad agency that I've done a bunch of work for, and their client was the Greater Cincinnati Radio Broadcasters Association. What that was a group of all the general managers of all the Cincinnati radio stations. Normally, those people are competitors, and they're always fighting each other for advertising dollars. But they have common enemies too. Newspapers, billboards, television, local magazines, they're always competing for those advertising dollars because there are people that don't really believe in the radio as an effective advertising medium. So this ad agency had this client who said, "We want to do something to promote radio as a medium, to prove the impact of radio." And what they developed was an idea that said, what if we spent a month advertising something on our stations that was fictitious, didn't really exist, and we advertised it for a month, and then after that month, we would do a market research survey about the name recognition of this fake product. And if the name recognition was high, we could go, look how many people know about this product, and it was advertised only on the radio. So I got a call from this ad agency. It was run by a guy named Jerry Galvin. And we came up with a couple of different concepts for a fake product. And of course, we had to be very careful about this because you can't just put anything on the radio that says it's fake. If somebody tries to buy it, that's fraud. We would go to jail for something like that. So we had to be very careful to come up with some kind of product that was interesting, memorable, but that you couldn't really buy, that you couldn't really go anywhere and do anything about it. So we put together a series of commercials, and we did it in secret. Only the managers of these radio stations knew about it. Nobody else at the stations, nobody else anywhere. I wrote the scripts, recorded these commercials with an announcer who came from a different city. He came here at night. We recorded when nobody else was around. And on January 14th, 1985, on about 16 Cincinnati radio stations, people heard this.
While Cincinnatians have been gazing upwards at all their new tall buildings, they haven't noticed the most exciting construction of all, underground. Nothing on earth compares with what you will experience when you shop under the earth, straight down, underground, where high prices will never see the light of day, where pollution is non-existent, and where the enormous energy savings of a naturally comfortable year-round climate get passed on to you. Keep listening for more details as we approach the grand opening of... I'm sorry, we can't give it away just yet. But remember this name, Plummet Mall. The best value in town is a hole in the ground. Plummet Mall, opening in Greater Cincinnati soon.
So things started to happen pretty quickly in two different worlds. In the world of the public, most people thought that was real. You know, the real announcer, real orchestra. We didn't have a budget for an orchestra, by the way. That was music that I had done a couple of years earlier for a corporate client, and it had never been on the radio. I just stole it from myself. And people thought it was real, and they were very excited. They wanted to find out where it was going to happen. There were some people that were very upset about the existence of Plummet Mall, and those people were the competitors to radio, people in newspapers, television, billboards, local magazines. This is a huge advertising opportunity. Why don't we have a piece of it? The only people they could call was the ad agency. And the only person they could talk to at the ad agency was Jerry Galvin, who had told everyone there, if anybody calls about Plummet Mall, don't say a word, just tell them you have to talk to Jerry Galvin, send the voicemail to me, and Jerry became completely unavailable. So nobody's questions were answered. And people really were like, what is this about? And after another week, the second commercial appeared.
It's the most revolutionary way to shop in all the world, and it's opening soon. Plummet Mall, the world's first shopping facility that's built straight down, underground, where the climate is naturally comfortable, and where the lower you go, the lower the prices go. Plummet Mall, where continuously moving walkways and spiral escalators take you conveniently from value to value. This is not just another shopping center. This is the future of shopping. Keep listening for the announcement of the location and grand opening of this totally new concept in shopping convenience. Plummet Mall. The best value in town is a hole in the ground. Plummet Mall. Opening in Greater Cincinnati soon.
I want to point out a couple of things. In advertising, they always put something in a commercial that's called the call to action. Act now while these prices are so low. Stop by before midnight tomorrow or you'll miss out. The only call to action in Plummet Mall was keep listening. Because the real product was the radio. So by the second and third week, Cincinnati was going crazy over Plummet Mall. People wanted to know where it was. Gary Burbank, you may remember, was a very popular radio host on WLW. He did not know the truth, and he spent an afternoon once on the air with people calling in saying they think they found the location. You know, I found a place in Cheviot, construction site. No, it's in Oakley. I found a construction site in Oakley. No, and everybody had theories about where it was going to be. Meanwhile, not only were newspapers, billboards, TVs trying to get in touch with this guy, Jerry Galvin, trying to get a piece of this advertising money, and he was unavailable. He also started hearing from people who had something to gain from Plummet Mall. Muzak tried to get in touch with him because, you know, you need to hear that annoying music in the ceiling while you're at the shopping center. Waste disposal companies. He heard from Cincinnati Gas and Electric. We don't know about this. This is an enormous project. Why have we not been notified about this? The phone company, same thing. Get us Jerry Galvin. Not to be found anywhere. So at some point, about 3 weeks in, people pretty much realized this has got to be fake. But who's doing it and why? Nobody could figure that part out. So finally, we got to the end of the 4th week. We weren't even sure at the time how we were going to finish this thing, and we came up with a perfect ending provided by God. And that was a huge cold wave came through the Midwest, just like we went through a heat wave. A very huge cold wave came through in January of 1985. And so at the end of January, people on Cincinnati radio heard this.
Ladies and gentlemen, please pay careful attention to the following announcement. Recently, you have been hearing about the imminent grand opening of the world's first vertical underground shopping center, Plummet Mall. Plummet Mall is the opposite of a skyscraper, going several hundred feet underground with dozens of famous stores. But unfortunately, the grand opening of Plummet Mall will be delayed. The 2 severe cold waves that have recently plagued the Midwest have caused a radical expansion and contraction effect beneath the Earth's surface. This has caused a profound shift of underground land masses, some by several hundred miles. Plummet Mall has been a tragic victim of this phenomenon and is believed to now be located somewhere between Greater Cincinnati and Lincoln, Nebraska. Search crews and seismologists hope to locate it within a few weeks. Until then, the best value in town is a hole in the ground. Plummet Mall, opening somewhere soon.
So, thank you. So about a week later, we conducted the survey of Plummet Mall. And of course, the numbers were off the charts because it had been in the newspapers and on television, and everybody was talking about it. And we had a press conference, we revealed everything, and the response, of course, from a lot of people was, well, of course you're going to get numbers like that when you lie to people and when you commit fraud. We did not commit fraud. We never got in any kind of legal trouble for Plummet Mall because you couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't buy anything. You couldn't even spend time waiting to buy something. All you could do was keep listening to the radio. So that really worked, and it got a lot of press. In the national press, there was an article about it in the Wall Street Journal and in all the broadcast magazines. It got to be pretty famous. And as a result of that, radio broadcasters associations in other cities in America contacted Jerry's ad agency and said, we want to do something in our town like Plummet Mall. Well, we couldn't do Plummet Mall again because of all the publicity that it had. We did this in a number of different cities, and we had to start from scratch every single time. Let me tell you about one of them. In North Carolina, in the triad, the Piedmont Triad of North Carolina, which is Greensboro, Winston-Salem, and High Point, we ran a series of commercials. Now again, somebody listening to the radio makes all kinds of assumptions about what they think this commercial is really about when it's really about something else. This sounds like a political commercial, even though it ran in January. Here is what the triad in North Carolina heard one day in 1986.
We will not only radically reduce the number of automobile accidents in North Carolina, we'll set an example for the entire country. Gene Jenkins. A lot of accidents are caused by left turns because most left turns are made in front of oncoming traffic. Well, that's just inviting trouble. Many intersections already forbid left turns because they're just too dangerous, so it's not that new of an idea.
That's Gene with a J and Jenkins with a G.
The Jenkins plan includes, plainly and simply, a statewide ban on the left turn. Yes, it means a little more planning, and it means a little more driving, but it also means a lot fewer accidents.
If you see that name on a ballot, remember, the Jenkins plan is a reasonable plan.
It's reasonable because it allows for left turns in those places where there really is no choice.
Gene Jenkins is a reasonable man.
I'm Gene Jenkins, testing the North Carolina waters. Keep listening.
Notice that the only thing you were told to do is keep listening. It doesn't say vote for me. It doesn't even say what I'm running for. But you make assumptions about the stuff you hear on the radio. So with every subsequent week, Gene Jenkins and his reasonable plan just got to seem a little less reasonable. His next commercial, he said he wants to institute a state pet tax. And that is, everyone who owns a pet would be taxed based on the size and environmental impact of that pet. If you had, a large dog, the tax would be higher than if you had a goldfish. And the money would be used for things like new uniforms for mail carriers that get attacked by dogs, stuff like that. The following week, the plan was to raise the state's literacy rate. And to do that, every adult in North Carolina would be required to read a book of their choice, because this is America. And after reading the book of their choice, they would write a book report and mail it into the state. The next reasonable plan would be to attract employers to North Carolina. To have Carolinas better looking, they institute a state dress code. And that was a reasonable plan because the spot inspections would only be in the workplace, never in the home. Well, obviously, at some point, people in North Carolina realized this was fake, but who's doing it and why? And every time we did this, that arc kind of happened, that there was a period where people realized this was not real, but didn't know what the real story was. And a very interesting thing happened in North Carolina that we didn't see coming, and that changed the whole direction of this project. One of the theories about Gene Jenkins was, what if Gene Jenkins really is going to be a new morning guy on one of these radio stations, and that station is tricking all the other stations into promoting it? That's the best fucking idea we've ever heard for a radio promotion. So I work for a radio corporation. They own WEBN and a bunch of other stations around the country. I called up J-Corps and said, you got any new morning shows happening anywhere? They said, yeah, we do. In fact, in Denver. We're going to be starting a morning show in Denver. We're not going to call it a morning zoo like everybody does. We're going to call them the Morning Flakes. And I said, oh, that kind of sounds like a cereal, doesn't it? So we did that. In 1987, in January, by the way, when the Denver Broncos had just won the playoffs to be in the Super Bowl, so there was very high media attention in Denver, on all the Denver radio stations, unknowingly, they played this.
Oh no, I woke up slow. I gotta get a new radio. It's almost 1:30, gotta move fast. I can beat him to the shower, give me half an hour. Can't believe another day is underway. I'm gonna beat my morning cares with some friends in a little box downstairs. You never let my morning down, you're my morning flakes. You get my day off of the ground, you're my morning flakes. No matter what the world out there can do to me, you make every day feel new to me. You never let my morning down, you're my morning flakes.
Morning Flakes. No outrageous claims, just outrageous taste. The kind of taste that makes any morning just a little friendlier.
You never let my morning down, you're my morning flakes.
Morning Flakes, new from the people at Taste More. Available soon in limited areas.
Available soon in limited areas. You can't buy it. We don't want you to spend money. New from the people at Taste More. We actually created a corporation, Taste More, LLC, so that we could legally say, Morning Flakes, a new product from the people at Taste More. Your friends in a little box downstairs, which you think means a box of cereal. No, we mean it's the radio on your kitchen counter. Obviously, that's what we mean. We got away with that for 3 days. Somebody at one of the radio stations smelled something and kind of figured it out. But we got what we wanted. We were on the front page of the Denver Post the same week that the Broncos were going to be in the Super Bowl. And so we got all the publicity from it that we wanted, thanks to all the other radio stations that were playing Morning Flakes. You know, I got to do a jingle. Again, I was born to do this. All the skills that I developed all through my life got me ready to do all of this for Plummet Mall. And it was fun, and it made an impact in the history of radio, and it pissed off just the right people. Thank you.
One more time for Jay. And let's give it up again for all our storytellers tonight. Steve, Greg, Jen, Jay, Sean Matarese in Channel 9.
Preston Bell Charles III.
Don Caudill, all our friends and volunteers here tonight, and all of you. It takes two people to tell a story. One to share it and the other open their hearts and listen, and tonight you did that for us. Thank you all so much. We wait to see you back here again on October 11th for True Roommate, but until then,
Be true.
good night.